major problems with the tiny house today, and I'm going to go through a bunch of things in this video, kind of a this or that video, but the tiny house is going to be a major portion of this video. Just the things that you got to work through, trying to be innovative enough to live off grid and still compensate for the elements, which I think a lot of people failed to do. One of the things we've been talking about recently is the Tractor Supply store. Apparently a conglomerate of big organizations make the chicken food for the Tractor Supply store. There's a theory out there that they've reduced the protein in the chicken food so the chickens aren't producing eggs. So if you have a backyard chicken and you're feeding them Tractor Supply, they're not getting eggs. We haven't had a problem, but Carolyn makes all her food. I showed you this several times now. I made a YouTube short video. I made a regular video. As a matter of fact, I'll put an up next box at the end of this video. It'll pop up next to my face, one side or the other. You can watch that in more detail on how Carolyn puts everything together. But she makes this corn hash grit thing, and right now she's cooking that up on top of the wood stove. And that's just some noodles. We stopped eating noodles, so we had a whole bunch of them because we kind of stockpiled them. So she ground them up in her grain mill, which is right over here. This is her grain mill here, and that's her meat grinder. We got it on the board. I keep telling her we need to permanently secure that somewhere, but she likes putting it on her lap and grinding it, so it looks like a difficult process to me, but she does it. She grinds up her corn and eggshells for the calcium. She grinds just all kinds of stuff. I'm not even going to try to name it all off. Then she makes cornbread, and that's the corn that she grinds up. She's got some fancy scratch that she uses. Fancy scratch has a lot of good stuff in it, Milo and different things. But the sunflower seeds is where the chicken's getting all their protein. I showed you this a few days ago in that video that's going to pop up where Carolyn sprouts sunflower seeds. So she takes a handful, I don't know how much sunflowers, but she fills this, maybe a 1/8 of a jar here. And then she fills it up with water, lets it sit overnight. Then the next day she lets it drain out, and I showed you that she's got holes drilled into the cap here. And then every day she puts water in this, fills it up, and then turns it over and lets it drain out. Then she puts it in here in the sun next to the window, and it sprouts. If you leave water in it, they'll rot. So yesterday we were talking about this problem with Tractor Supply store, and Carolyn says, well, I don't know, maybe we're not getting enough eggs. Maybe I'm not giving enough protein. I mean, she started nitpicking her process. So this morning she started looking up different ways of doing things. So she's got a lot of seeds, garden seeds. She got heirlooms from a subscriber, sent her a whole bucket of heirlooms. And then she has this place where she donates, I don't know, $20 or $30, and they send her a bunch of seeds too, and they're all heirlooms. Heirlooms are important because you can take the seeds off those heirlooms and replant them. Whereas if they're hybrids don't necessarily grow with their offspring seeds. But we don't eat vegetables anymore. We just eat meat. So we got all these seeds, nothing to do. So she's going to start growing pinto beans and different things. And then she can cook those up. You got to cook them. You got to cook beans and rice and all that. Otherwise it can swell up in their stomach and their gizzard and all that and be a big problem. That's why you don't throw rice at weddings anymore. I forget what you throw, but it doesn't matter. So she's going to raise sunflower seeds. And like I said in that video, she can turn a 50-pound bag of sunflower seeds into 250-pound. And she did some experimenting with this last year. We grew sunflower seeds and corn, although some people were telling me we didn't. I even asked her, maybe I misremembered, but I went down there and pulled out a bunch of roots in this area down there. We planted like corn and seed, and we had mixed results with that. But we're going to dedicate the garden area to sunflower seeds and corn, pinto beans, since we're not raising anything for ourselves. We grew tomatoes last year, but it didn't do too good. This way we can continue to give the chickens plenty of protein, and we have alternate sources. You know, these what ifs. We would have never thought that chicken feed would have been hampered with so they're not producing eggs. But it makes sense. I've said this in a couple videos now. They don't want us eating eggs. They don't want us eating chicken. That's why we got the bird flu and all that. So how are they going to get the backyard chicken producer to stop eating their own eggs, raising their own eggs and all that stuff? That's simple. Give them food that won't allow them to lay eggs. Carolyn outsmarted them this year. She started, right when they started this trick in September, That's when she started feeding pretty much exclusively sunflower seeds and this mesh that she's been working on. Now, the reason she did it was completely for a different reason. It got down to -8 earlier this winter. So she didn't want her chickens to get cold. Well, corn helps keep them warm for two reasons. You got the carbohydrates in there, so your body's burning the sugar, so their body is burning the sugar. But it also, corn makes you fatter. So put a little fat on these chickens, they'll keep them warmer for the winter. Well, when you're starting to feed them a lot of corn, then they won't eat their regular chicken feed, but they're not getting protein. So she was aware of that. That's why we did the sunflower seeds. We always thought that if SHTF were to happen, that we would have to feed them sunflower seeds and stuff around fauna around here, whatever. Here it is. It's not SHTF. It's just they've decided they don't want us to eat eggs. So wintertime's always a challenging time for us. The first year we moved in here, we weren't quite prepared and our water froze. So the second year, we didn't have any problems, but we didn't get too terribly cold that last year. This year, we got down to -8 degrees earlier this year, and our water froze up. Now, people will always say, bury your tank, and they're talking about the tank. I've never had a problem with the tank freezing. It's never been the tank. Even in this video, I will have people in the comment section tell me what to do with the tank to keep it warm. Put fish heaters in it and all kinds of stuff. The tank doesn't freeze. It's the plumbing that freezes. And I'm going to show you what I've done and how we've been fairly successful with it. It took us to -6 before it froze. So that's pretty impressive if you really think about it. All the homes in this area, they all froze up. So it wasn't like it was anything unique to us. Now, of course, we still have the well. The well can't freeze. I've showed you that before. We got it rigged so all the water drains back down into the pipe. We still have water even if our pipes freeze up. So this morning, it got down to 16 degrees. And I came in here and I turned on the water. So how I turn on the water, this is our water heater right here. I've showed this before. This is a camping on-demand water heater. You can buy them off Amazon, 150 bucks. This is a Camplux, C-A-M-P-L-U-X, Camplux or Plex or something, I don't know. So, I mean, I don't sell these or anything. This is a backup one. We thought our primary one gave up on us, but it didn't. It was the water pump, and I'm going to explain the water pump. We put that other one back up in the attic. If this one goes out, then we'll have that one as a backup. This morning I turned it on, so now the water's on. I'm not entirely sure if you can hear the water pump. The water pump is out there by the tank. So what that is, that's an RV water pump. RVs have a tank and you pumps water into the RV. So you can really look at our water system as an RV system. It really is just like an RV system. And I can actually hook up to an external source. I can disconnect this right here and hook this straight up to the well with another hose. Just take this hose off, put another hose on, and I would have water from the well. Well, this morning I turned the water on, the pump kicked on, but I got no water. Well, it was early and I wasn't really thinking clear. And I was thinking, well, maybe the pump is messed up or something. It's running, I can hear it run, but I wasn't getting any water. Well, I have this light switch on the other side over here in the little closet area we got. I'm not going to take you over there because it'll take more time to get to it to show you, but there's a light switch and I can shut the water pump off with that light switch. So I just shut it off, gave me time to think about it. Now, the way my electric works for the water pump is back here I have a little lawnmower battery. And then I have a battery tender. You can buy them for like 20 bucks off Amazon. I think it's called battery tender. And it's like 5 mega amps. I mean, it's not much at all. But we don't use a lot of electricity when we're running the RV pump. It's 6 amps, but you figure we only run it a few minutes a day. So that battery tender has plenty of time to recharge that battery. It's just a little lawnmower battery. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, why didn't you just hook the RV pump up to the batteries down in the camper? That's where our solar panels are hooked into, is those batteries down there. Well, we did a cost analysis and the wiring would have been really thick because by the time you got 6 amps up 100 feet to this pump, it would have been 8 gauge. It would have been really expensive to have that much wire that thick. So when we broke it down, it cost 40 bucks basically to do it the way I did it. And I can just charge the battery, plug the battery tender into our AC system, because the battery's DC, and I lose a little bit of the energy in the energy transfer because I got to invert it and then convert it. I invert the DC electric to AC electric down there at the camper. Then I come up here and then I convert AC electric back to DC electric. It uses a little bit more electric doing it that way. So there is a downside to this, but with us being so far away from our batteries, and the reason the batteries are down there is because that's the sunniest spot in the yard. If I put my solar panels up here, then I would never be able to get any sun because of all the trees. Well, now this hose runs out to the tank on the side of the house, which is right over here. You've seen the tank before. It's an IBC tank. This hose runs out to the tank. In between the tank and here is the RV pump. So you have a suction, but it's not really a suction. RV pumps don't suck. Water has to gravity feed into the pump. That's why I can't bring the pump in the house. But even if I could, I'd still have a freezing issue because the suction could still freeze. So this hose goes out there to the pump and then the pump to the IBC tank. So it sucks from the IBC tank and then the RV pump pressurizes the water and brings it in here. People will tell me to put a tank up in the air. In order to get enough pressure to put a tank up in the air to start the, I would have to have it 60 feet up in the air. This light is flickering in the camera, I can see it. Maybe that's a little better. That way I'd get enough pressure to start the water pump. So I don't want to do it that way. Also, I'd have to figure out how to heat it that way also. So what the system I have is actually pretty flawless. It works really good. Now, the way I try to keep this hose and RV pump from freezing is I run ventilation from up here all the way to the IBC tank, and the hose, this hose is inside that ventilation. I have a fan here, and then I have a fan at the wall. So I have two blowers basically blowing hot air from this wood stove up to here. It gets about to, I don't know, 100, 110 degrees up here. And all that hot air is being pushed down into the water tank area. Well, last night it got down to 16 degrees or 14 degrees. And what it did was it froze up the water from the tank to the pump. It didn't freeze the hose. So that's why the pump kicked on. When it felt the pressure difference, when I opened this valve up, the pump felt the pressure difference, a drop in pressure, kicked on, but there was no water coming to it because I didn't turn this one on. I should have turned this one on. Also, I didn't get up last night. The house got down to 61 degrees, which I try not to do when it gets these cold of temperatures. Usually if the temperature gets below 20 degrees, I'll start the wood stove about 2 a.m. Well, I just didn't do it last night. So it was my fault. However, it was no big deal to fix it. Went out there with my little blowtorch. I heated up the suction line, which is probably a foot long. It's not that long. Like I said, the tank didn't freeze, and I was able to thaw it out with just a couple seconds. So tonight, I'll take all the precautions. I'll make sure this fan is on. Before Carolyn goes to bed, she goes to bed about midnight, 11 o'clock midnight. I'll have her run this to get the water from the tank, because the water from the tank is usually warmer than the water in the hose. It's hot because coming out of the well it's about 60 degrees. Somebody will tell me to put heat tape on it and all that stuff. Well, all that takes electricity. And then they'll argue, well, you're having to run the fan anyways. Well, I still have to run the fan. Even if I had heat tape, I have to run the fan to help try to keep the tank warm. I really do think this is a pretty solid system. Getting down to -6 before it froze, pretty solid system. And the failure yesterday was just my fault. So if you click this up next box, take that video where I was talking about Tractor Supply and how to make your own food. So I hope I can inspire you to work out your problems when you're living your dreams. Thanks for watching.